All right, so now let's move into our segment having to do with how to think like an attorney, essentially, and how to protect yourself. And in this segment, I want to talk about what to do if you're not getting paid. Okay, so guys, as we're going through this, feel free to drop some comments and questions if you have them. But as it relates to not getting paid, this can take form in a number of ways, right? So if you are an artist, a performer, you have a gig, you have a studio session, if you are a producer, right, you provide your production services. If you're a record label, you provide certain services. In whatever scenario you find yourself not getting paid, what do you do about that? Okay, so this is a big call that I get to my law office, and it will just be, this is the scenario. What do we do from here? So I'm going to walk you through how we typically do this so that you can kind of be prepared when you find yourself in the situation, or you might be in the situation right now. Okay. So, from the get go, the first thing I always say, was there an agreement in place having to do with the thing that you're not getting paid for now? And usually the answer is yes. And then I say, okay, is that in writing somewhere? So the best form is, do you have a contract? And sometimes the answer is going to be no. And that's not the end of the world, right? So we can have verbal agreements, meaning you and I agree to something, right? So we agree to certain services in exchange for certain compensation. And that's an enforceable agreement. Sometimes it can be hard to, prove it because it was verbal, but it's nonetheless enforceable. Okay, so then we say, is there a contract? Even if there isn't, the next thing I say is, go back and look at things like emails, text messages, any form of communication where you guys were discussing the terms of your deal. That's going to be incredibly important because our phones break, emails get hacked, all kinds of things happen. So if you need to prove the terms of your deal, you got to make sure that you are screenshotting and saving, backing up anything that you're going to be able to use to support your claim that we had this agreement, this person didn't pay. And, the reason is because sometimes this escalates to a lawsuit, but we're not there yet. Okay. So we're at the point right now. Let's look at, what the discussion was, what are the terms, and then what evidence do you have to kind of support your claim. Now, if you have a contract, that's great. That's all we need. We need the four corners of the contract that everyone signed. So then usually my next question is, what did you do to try to resolve it up until this point? Have you had a discussion with the other side? And if so, what did they say? And sometimes, people will call my office, willing to and wanting to go to bat and go to war, and they haven't actually had a discussion with the other side. So sometimes it's helpful to try to resolve it informally yourself, but you can't get in touch with an attorney. An attorney can do a demand letter. So getting an attorney to draft a demand letter and to say, here's the contract, or here was the agreement, here's where you breached it, and then citing to some legalese, right? Some law, and making some legal argument. And then, of course, we usually have the hammer in the letter that says, if you don't comply, if you don't pay what's due, this is what's going to happen. And what happens is, we send someone after you with a bat. That's not what happens. We file a lawsuit against you. So, that's kind of the strength of hiring an attorney and having someone to represent you. But if you need to kind of save some money, right, before you hire an attorney, go through those steps that I discussed. Get all your evidence, get the contract, have a discussion, try to resolve it yourself. But if it's not getting resolved, go hire an attorney. It will be well worth your money. Okay. And then we send you a demand letter, right? So not you, the other side, we send them a demand letter. And then if they ignore it or they fail to come to some kind of resolution, then we discuss filing a lawsuit. Okay. So that's kind of the progression to go through. So going back to the beginning of, now that you know that this is kind of how this works, you want to keep in mind saving communications, documenting what's discussed, but also have contracts. Obviously a good portion of our audience here, and those of you in the chat, are musicians or otherwise in the music business in some kind of way. But even if you're not, this applies to you in any deal that you have with any person. So I hope you guys find this helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, but that's kind of the nitty gritty of it. And I went to law school and paid $200,000, or am paying $200,000 in student loans so that I could learn how this works. I could learn how to think like an attorney. And that's the purpose of why I share this information with you guys, so that you can start to kind of think like this and not feel lost, not feel victimized when you're in these situations, but to feel empowered. But like I said, having someone that you can call, having an attorney who can kind of come to bat for you is always a good thing.